Thanks so much for being here. Just real quick for the record, can you give me your first name, your last name, and your title?
Rand Champion, and I am the Director of Communications for the Department of Corrections.
Okay, so just real quick, let's talk about Grant Hardin. Um, he is an escaped inmate. The search continues today. What does that look like for law enforcement and you guys?
Honestly, having daylight is going to be a big help. The terrain up here at Calico Rock is very, it's rocky, it's treacherous with all the rain, with everything. It's a very unforgiving landscape, and so it was hard to do a search last night. We did have dogs, we did have drones. Hopefully, we're hoping now with daylight being up and using the canine groups, using the drones, kind of retracing steps and finding things that we weren't able to find in the dark last night. So teams are out right now searching. We do feel very confident that he is fairly close to the prison here at Calico Rock. We've had a lot of tips and leads that have forced us to believe that. That's not saying he hasn't gotten in a car and gone somewhere, but at this time, the information we have, we believe he is still fairly close to the unit.
And you say the information and you guys believe, what would lead you to believe that? Is that evidence you guys have found or just maybe gut instinct?
Just instinct and just some of the things we've recovered doing a search, talking to people, and kind of retracing steps. These are very experienced people that have done this for many, many years, and from what they are going off of, they all feel very confident that he is not far from the unit at this point.
Gotcha. And what does it look like with all of the rain that we've had? Will that hinder the search in any way, make it more difficult?
It has made it tricky. Yesterday there was a lot of rain and that affects the dog searches with the scent. Um, we're hoping at some point with all the rain and as cold and as wet as it's been, that's forced him to not move as fast, kind of slowed him down a little bit and forced to take shelter. So it does have its hindrances, but it also does have its advantages as well. And hoping those will play in our favor.
And what is nearby? Where could he possibly go? Would that be interstates, river, forest? What does that look like?
A lot of rivers, a lot of foresty areas, a lot of farms. There's a lot of farms up in this area, and so just a lot of different types of shelters, a lot of different types of places that we're searching right now.
And how have you guys sort of warned residents around that area? Is that a door-to-door knock, some sort of social media technology advance?
Yeah, all of the above. We have a electronic notification system that we've been able to tell out. We've been very active on social media. We have had officers and members of the Arkansas State Police and other local and state enforcements going to nearby residents, letting them know. Word of mouth has been great, but basically anything we can do to utilize and make sure people in this area are aware we've been doing.
And have you guys found anything out there on the trail to search for him so far, like any clothing items, anything disposed of as of yet?
There have been a few things that have been found, which has kind of helped us pinpoint and why we believe that. And so we're hoping to find more this morning.
Understand. Okay, can we talk about whenever he escaped on Sunday? Could you just sort
Mm.
of run me through how that happened when you guys noticed it happened?
It, yeah, it's, just kind of how it happened was just on a regular patrol look. He was not accounted for in a call in a roll call. Surveillance footage did verify that we did see the image that's been floating around of him wearing a makeshift outfit. That is not a standard inmate uniform. That's not a standard Department of Corrections uniform. That was a makeshift thing to mimic law enforcement. And that is what we're looking into now is how that was made, how that was acquired, and now he was able to get outside the gates with that on.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so you don't know exactly how he got a hold of that? Maybe if he stole something or if it's something he had in his cell. We're not sure yet.
We're all still looking into that. It's still an ongoing investigation where what that even comprised of and how he was able to get a hold of that.
I see. And how much video is there of him from the time they did the check to him leaving? How much video does it show him throughout the prison?
That's what we're also looking for as well. We're going back through all of our, surveillance counts throughout the entire unit, trying to find what we can to piece that together.
Understand.
So,
And talk about real quick, doing the count on him. You said noticed through a regular count that he was missing. How long before that count had he been checked on or counted before that?
from what we can tell now, it was about 10 to 15 minutes, um, that we're trying to account for where the last time he was seen and when the surveillance video is when he's caught on surveillance.
Do you guys believe that anyone else was involved in this or that he acted alone?
That's still something we're looking into at this time.
I see, definitely. Is there anything that we need to share with the public to look out for, what he could be wearing or potentially maybe what he looks like that it doesn't show in his mugshots?
Um, No, I think it's pretty, we're not sure at this point whether he's still wearing the uniform that he was wearing when he escaped. Um, we tend to believe he's not, but at this point, we can't rule that out. Again, I think the mugshot that we have of him is fairly recent. It was taken a few months ago. So it should give a pretty accurate description of what he does look like. Again, we're asking anyone sees anything, hears anything, knows anything, please contact 911. Please contact your local authorities. Please do not try to approach him by yourself. We know he does have a violent history, and so we're asking, please let the authorities handle that.
And speaking of that, the violent history, since this is a person who had life in prison, do you feel like he has nothing to lose? And how does that play into the search for him and the aggressiveness of looking for him to capture him to bring him back in?
Sure, that's definitely a factor. Those that face a longer sentence, they do tend to be a little bit more risky. They do try to take a little bit more chances, knowing, like you said, they really don't have a lot to lose. So it does make us even more on guard and wanting to bring this to an end swiftly.
Can you talk about the scope of the amount of law enforcement across the state that are working on that? Is this just a few counties? Is this across the entire state of Arkansas?
It's been across the entire state. We've had, I can't speak to exactly how I've been here, but I know we've had Arkansas State Police, we've had Game and Fish, we've had a lot of local counties, a lot of counties throughout the state, just state officials. So it has very much been a collaborative effort across multiple agencies across the state.
Gotcha. Are you guys looking into any contact that he had with anybody through phone calls or mail prior to the escape? Is that part of the investigation as well?
All of that we are looking into past actions, seeing if there's something we're missing or a pattern that can help us determine what his plan was and where his whereabouts may be.
Understand. And are there any ties to obviously Benton County in Arkansas, but any ties to any other parts of Arkansas that you guys are keeping an eye on?
I mean, at this point, it's hard to know exactly who he knows and where he knows, and so we're making sure we're keeping a very broad net on that. Obviously, Northwest Arkansas is where he has family; it's where he's from, so that is an area of concern. But we can't rule out any part of the state.
Understand. And what about other states regionally connecting Arkansas? How are you guys working with their law enforcement to warn them or to pull them in on the search?
Sure, we've been in contact with neighboring states as well. Obviously, where he lived and where he was the police deputy is right on the border with Missouri, and so making sure bordering states know. I think anytime a situation like this arises, we want to make sure everyone around is aware, just because we don't know what his plans are, we don't know what the flight risk is, and so I want to make sure all those surrounding states are aware.
And was there any reprimands or was he in any trouble prior to this or his time in prison at all? Did he get any reprimands?
I mean, according to his file, he had no major disciplinaries. But that's really all we know at this point.
Gotcha. Have you guys reached out to family and or victims or family of victims to warn them? And what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, they were among the first that we reached out to, both his immediate family and families of the victims that we had, just to make sure they were aware and that they can be they can be on the lookout for sure.
Anything else that you'd like to share that maybe I didn't ask you think's important?
No, I think it's just, we're trying to make sure we do our due diligence. Understand, there's weather coming in later today, which could play a factor again, both as a hindrance and maybe an advantage. And so, again, our big thing is just, please anyone, if you see anything, hear anything, please reach out to authorities and hopefully we can bring this to a swift conclusion.
I see. And one last question for you. Is there
Mhm.
any idea of inclination that he could have any sort of weapon from the time leaving the prison to now?
Nothing that we see indicates that. Again, once he's left the facility, we don't know what his whereabouts are and what he's done since then.
I understand. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it. I appreciate you reaching out.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you.
And
Have a
said
great day.
any updates we get, we'll be sure to let you know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.